So at the time I'm recording this, it's been almost a year since Hurricane Helene hit western North Carolina, and I thought I'd compile footage of the storm the day it passed by, the floodwaters and how high they had risen, and compile that with what it looks like today. And as you see in this first clip, this is an area called Farmer's Fish Camp, and if you look at that guardrail I'm at here during the day the storm passed over, you'll see in this clip here as I approach where that guardrail begins, and you'll just see how high the water was during the hurricane. And you'll see several other clips here as we continue of just how devastating the storm was to the area, and a lot of tree damage, a lot of flooding, a lot of power issues and communication issues being knocked out. I know our church community was without power for quite some time. Very devastating how much damage was done to our local area, and we weren't even near the worst of it. You go towards the Asheville area from us, and it was much more devastating. Loss of life and loss of homes, although there was areas nearby that had some devastating losses. Overall, most people just lost power and dealing with the cleanup of debris and trees down and roads being blocked off and washed out for months later. But thankfully we recovered from that, and again, I thought we could look back and see the difference in what a year makes. And it's amazing as time goes by, the storms we've experienced in our lives, both literal and metaphorical, as God gets us through these things. When we look back, we just I think we should think about, wow, how the Lord has gotten us through these things, how the Lord has gotten us through hard times. And in the second part of this video, I'm just going to break down a story in the Bible about Jesus and the disciples literally going through a storm, and how that shows an example of how God will get us through these storms in life. But as we continue with these clips here, this clip here particularly is interesting. You could see the floodwaters came up to this emporium area, and even though it was a horrible situation, it was kind of a beautiful scene, seeing the water up around this emporium. But here in this clip, I go back to the emporium, and I'm about to walk through the back of it, and again, you'll just see how devastatingly high the waters came, how far from the river they came up. Again, it's amazing looking back a year how different things are, how most of those trees have been cleaned up, how most of the power has been restored and communications restored, and people have been able to clean up their yards and the damage, and it's amazing what a difference a year makes. But again, I think it's important we look back and see how God got us through this storm. And again, as I said, there's still many people recovering from Hurricane Helene, but no matter what, I think what we need to do is focus on the promises of God. No matter what storms we go through in life, no matter what hardships we go through in life, we need to trust that the Lord's with us and He's going to get us through it. We have to go through those storms. There will be damage in those storms, again, both literally and metaphorically, but at the end of the day, we need to hold true and trust in the promises of Jesus Christ that He's going to get us to the other side. So this last clip here is Rifle Range Road, and again, you can just see how high the floodwaters came up the day of the storm. And again, as we transition here, I'm just going to speak a little bit about an example in the Bible where Jesus demonstrates He gets us through the storm both literally and metaphorically. So enjoy. So as I think back to a year ago, when Hurricane Helene hit, I think of all the fear and anxiety that was in the community in western North Carolina. And understandably so, people were worried about their properties, worried about their homes, worried about the damage to businesses, and lack of power and communication for a significant amount of time. And of course, there was some that suffered even worse, losing dear loved ones to the storm. I think it was over a couple hundred people that was lost in that storm. But I'm reminded of the time Jesus told His disciples
when they were on the coast of the Sea of Galilee to get into the boat, the ship, they're going to go to the other side. And the disciples would listen to Jesus, and they'd get in the ship, and as the ship was sailing across the Sea of Galilee, a great storm arose, and things looked bleak in that storm. It looked like the disciples were going to die. It looked like the ship was going to sink, and they weren't going to make it, and they had great fear and anxiety because of this. So much so that they were disturbed when they found Jesus sleeping in the hull of the ship, and they frantically woke him up and said, "Do you not care that we perish?" And Jesus simply gets up and says, "Peace, be still," and the storm immediately stops. And he looks at the disciples, who obviously are amazed of this power that Jesus has exhibited, and said, "Why do you fear? For you have little." No, he doesn't say little. He says, "You have no faith." Jesus told him he was going to get to the other side. They should have known and trusted Jesus would get them through this storm. And it's so often in life we go through storms, both literal like Hurricane Helene, and metaphorical. But even the worst storm that we go through in life is one day we'll all face death itself. But even in death, we should not fear. We should not fear death itself, because Jesus has made a promise to us that he will get us to the other side of even death. He promised us eternity in the kingdom of heaven forever and ever. So we as Christians, we shouldn't fear. And understandably, I look back on this storm, and so many people are still recovering. While most people have recovered, most people have cleaned the debris from their houses, repaired the damage to their houses. As you see in the beginning of the video, it didn't take long for the rivers to go back to their normal levels. And for most people, they've recovered from the storm. While some still have many years ahead of them to recover from this, most people have recovered, and those that haven't, eventually they'll get through it. And I think when we look back on the hard times in our life, what we need to remember is that God got us through those times. And God is still in our life, and he's going to get us through the future storms in our life. And we shouldn't fear. We shouldn't have anxiety. We should instead put our faith in Jesus Christ, that he's going to get us through this storm. So that's what I think as I reflect back on the storm and all the fear and anxiety we went through, how much less we would have if we just put our faith and trust in Jesus. Again, that doesn't mean we don't go through the storm, but we should just trust that even in death, Christ will get us to the other side, and he has better things waiting for us in eternity in the kingdom of heaven. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Bible Biker, and I hope you'll join me for the next one. God bless.